275 days after the Wallabies beat Portugal in St Etienne, the men in gold are back. They're finally going to return to the field. Gone the days of Eddie Jones. That's right. Just a few days, a Saturday, in fact, life under Joe Schmidt commences when the Wallabies will run out against Wales in Sydney. I'm Christy Doran, and coming up on the Raw Rugby podcast today, we're going to check in with Tom Robertson, Dr. Tom Robertson, back from Oxford. We'll get an update on whether or not he's a chance to play rugby anytime soon. We'll also speak to Gareth Griffiths from the BBC out of Wales, who's part of the touring pack down under. The devastating news of Kurtley Beale, and also the shock news on Sunday evening that Michael Hooper has hung up the boots from an international perspective anyway, missing out on the Australian Olympics side. So without further ado, let's get into this, the Raw Rugby podcast. Matt, question without notice for you. Which influential rugby figure in Australian rugby started their work on July 1 in 2023?
Their work?
Yeah, I don't want to give it away too much, but it's an influential rugby figure in the job for a year.
Well, it's not Joe. Is it Philip?
Philip, you can call him Philip. I'm not sure if I'll get away with doing that, but you're right. Phil Waugh, the Rugby Australia CEO, in the job for a year.
Probably the longest tenure in CEO history for Australian rugby.
That actually should be the other question. Who have we had more, coaches or CEOs since, let's go back to maybe 2012, 2013.
Remember how they used to ask after if you'd been in a crash, like who's the Prime Minister? And then they stopped saying that because we kept swapping. I feel like we're kind of the same thing with the leadership of Australian rugby, but hey, good on him.
Oh dear. Yeah, well, look, a piece coming up on the Raw very shortly about Phil Waugh. 1 year in, he tells me he's still got his hair, but look, there wasn't that much to begin with, but he's still got what he has, and I can't really talk too much because mine's quickly going as well. But look, we're just a couple of days out from the Wales test. How do you kind of feel about it? Because there's not been that much noise. It's state of origin. We're in the middle of AFL Rugby League. This is the moment to start to shine for Aussie rugby. How do you feel? What's the kind of the mood out there?
Excitement for one. It's always exciting. Test season. And look, I think as you know, we're very much heavily entrenched in the rugby community. I think for us to get the broader appeal, we got to get some wins. Unfortunately, there is still very much a lot of the talk has been about Eddie leaving and getting bundled out of the World Cup. So I think it's I think this new crop of Wallabies will be keen to kind of write a new story in a sense. And as fans, I'm sure we're keen for it too.
Oh, totally. Yeah, a bit of news over the last few days. So that 38-person squad, we talked about it last week, saying that there was quite a few, but a couple have since left. Ryan Smith, the Queensland lock, probably one of the more surprising ones. Harry Wilson probably was never going to play that first match since he broke his arm. Whether or not he comes back and features in the second test in Melbourne, we'll see. But I just get the feeling like that Queensland game against Wales is the opportunity for him to re-emerge. Unfortunately, devastating. Kurtley Beale was released to kind of go back, and I don't think he was in the frame for the first test, but he asked Joe Schmidt, can I play against East? I really want to play. Comes off the bench. It was a last-minute kind of inclusion, 6 p.m. the night before he found out confirmation that he could play, and there was a slight little niggle with Ben Donaldson, which just delayed that announcement. But unfortunately, Achilles injury reported was there on the Saturday, just devastating for him. We'll talk a bit more about that later on. And Len Ikitau as well, just got a hamstring injury at the moment. How bad it is remains to be seen. There's a bit of a veil of secrecy at the moment with the Wallabies not wanting to give away too much. But 38-34, Joey Walton, another guy coming in just in the last minute, the Romanian Rumbella, who we spoke about last week, but also wrote a feature over the weekend. He's withdrawn for personal reasons over the last couple of days. So a fair bit going on.
Yeah, there's a fair bit going on. Obviously, I think Lenny Cattell, that's a huge potential loss. So we'll find out more. Like many Wallabies fans, I've been so excited to see him back in the jersey, considering he had a very frustrating end to the season last year, and I'm sure he was as well. So, hopefully just a false start and he'll be back and will feature heavily for the rest of the season. So, yeah, bit going on. It's devastating about Kurtley. At 35 now, Achilles injury. It's tough to come back from. I don't know if you've heard of many guys come back from at this age.
Well, the reality is you don't hear of too many guys playing 35, 36 international rugby, do you? Generally speaking, like Johnny Sexton was probably a rare exception, 38, finished up at the World Cup last year. But you're right, Quade Cooper clearly did his Achilles about 2 months ago, 2022 August, but it's a 9-month return, so devastating news for him. No captain yet. Are you surprised that Joe Schmidt's held off on that, or do you just think that he's really waited to the last moment to get a picture of who's who in the zoo?
Yeah, I think that. I think Joe's very much he's come in and he hasn't been given the role of selling the game, maybe that Eddie took on. I think Joe's very much come in and he's head down, bum up. He's thinking about, how's the best way I can select this team, and to do the best possible, job that they can do. So look, he's, you're not hearing an early captain. You're not hearing him sledge league. You're not hearing, all this kind of stuff, which to be fair was entertaining. But I think he's been given a mandate he's not there necessarily to sell. He's there to get some performances up, which is good because I think we're very much getting the horse before the cart there. I think that's the correct way forward. However, Australian rugby isn't New Zealand rugby. You do have to kind of sell. So, hopefully, I'm sure Rugby Australia have got some measures in place to kind of make up for that. It'll be interesting. We're very much behind him, and it'll be a tough ask, but I think it's very much within their capabilities to win this first Test series, that's for sure.
So Michael Hooper captained the Wallabies 69 times, a record amount. The question is, it probably won't ever be broken. I know that George Gregan previously held the record, played him out in a test, 139. James Slipper's catching up to that mark. But last year there were 6 Wallaby skippers in 9 matches. Do you, with Michael Hooper only playing that initial game against South Africa before his calf injuries and then the bizarre decision to kind of leave him out. But do you get the sense that in Australian rugby, we love to put the Wallabies captain on such a high pedestal? It's like second to, it's like the Aussie cricket captaincy. It's second to the prime ministership of Australia. Do you think it's important? Who do you think is it? Alan Alatoa? You get the sense, like great leader at the Brumbies and so much experience.
Yeah, look, you're seeing a trend across probably multiple sports nowadays. Is they're very much going to maybe a figurehead captain, but then about 9 vice captains or whatever. And I think that's probably a realization that it is a really difficult job, and maybe that model is a little bit outdated. You definitely see a lot of teams will have a captain and a very vocal vice, particularly if the captain is in the tight 5, because he'll most likely be off in the last 20 minutes. So you need a game caller kind of calling the shots then. I think that's probably what you see with Alan. I think he would be the sensible choice, and sensible Joe has been all that, so far. He's been very, very good so far. So I dare say he'll be very sensible and pick Alan. But yeah, like I said, with guys like that, you've just got to make sure you got some game callers late in the game because, those points mean a lot.
Well, if you think about who he had, his skipper for a long while was Rory Best, wasn't it? Right up in the front row, great talisman of Irish rugby. I wonder whether or not a Fraser McWright or a Tom Wright become his vice captains. I think we touched upon it a few weeks ago, but I think having just a balance of leaders across the entire 15 is a good thing, and we've seen their pedigree throughout Super Rugby too. We'll talk a bit more about that and also a bit more around what this Wallabies makeup might be. But let's get to someone who knows the Wallabies very well fresh back from Oxford, Tom Robertson.
Hey, Throb. How you going?
Good, mate. How are you?
Nice coloured shirt, mate. Very good.
Yeah, green and gold for this week, you know.
Yeah, very clever. You're always a step ahead of everyone, mate. You big nerd.
Behind, I think, mate.
Yeah.
Behind.
Well, we don't even need a segue, do we, when we've got you two just talking? Hey, Tom, great to see you, mate. When did you get back to Oz?
Got back to Perth last week, and then had a full training week over at the Force, and then they had sort of 3 weeks off, staff included. So they said, do your gym and fitness from anywhere. So I came over to Sydney and catching up with family, which has been great.
That's not bad, mate. You're just fresh off the plane, and you get to keep your feet
One on,
up for the
three
next
off.
3 weeks.
Oh yeah, it's I need to get back up to speed. So it's been a big 3 weeks, getting ready for mini preseason, then the summer or the sort of spring tour over in Perth. So it'll be good fun.
Throb, what's it like over there? Like in terms of schedule, are you training 4 days a week? Are you training twice a week? Is it your Sydney uni kind of comparable? Is it like what's it like?
Yeah, at the moment it's a bit of a weird one after Super Rugby. So we're training about 4 days a week at the moment, and then playing Perth Club Rugby after the awards night.
Sorry, mate, I'll jump in. I meant at Oxford.
Oh, at Oxford.
Yeah. No one cares about the Force, mate. We know what they do. They're busy.
Oh no, they're very different at Oxford. It's they got all these weird traditions and stuff they've been doing for 150 years, and it's amateur, but it's very, very cool experience, and really enjoyed it. All the traditions and stuff, and all the people that you play with are all geniuses that are going to rule the world one day. So it's good to see them in their dormancy when they're still young pups, and then you get in 20 years' time they're the next Boris Johnson or something like that. So it'll be very cool to see what they do in the future.
And the next Boris Johnson, that'll set the cat amongst the pigeons. We've probably got another one in the States around the corner returning. But Tom, what are some of those traditions you're talking
about? So they have some really interesting things that they do. Probably not performance-wise the best, but the week before the game against Cambridge, they wake up at 5 a.m. and run up this hill called the Clump. That's about half an hour down the road from Oxford. As the dawn's breaking, you're running up this hill. You do these hill sprints. The week before the biggest game of the year, and you watch the sunrise, and you talk to each other, and blokes start crying and like telling about their life story and stuff. It's really, really cool experience. And then the night before the varsity game, they get past players in your position to write you a letter about what the game meant to them and how much it would mean for Oxford to beat Cambridge tomorrow. And every single member of the squad has to write a letter to every other single member of the squad saying what they mean to them and what they want them to do tomorrow, which is, very took a few hours to do that, I'm not going to lie, but it's a very, very cool experience.
I'd be worried about my spelling at Oxford. You want to make sure your grammar and your spelling is against them.
Yeah, put it through spell check a few times just to make sure that living up to the Australian hype over there. So I'll go through it all good, I think.
Well, mate, that's why Matt Tamura sticks to podcasts. You don't have to worry about the grammar so much.
I'm in my pajamas as we speak.
Well, there's quite a few Aussies that have done this in the past, either gone to Oxford, Cambridge, and I know that Sydney University has several Rhodes Scholars that have gone through, and the Roger Davises of the world. What did you know about Oxford and Oxford rugby before going over, and maybe what surprised you during your stint over there?
Yeah, I guess the history of the game, I sort of knew going over there. I think it's the second oldest rugby game still played in the world. So I think England versus Scotland is number one, and then Oxford versus Cambridge is number two. So I knew there was going to be a fair bit of history, but I guess the thing that surprised me the most was just like the backstories of the people that you go and see over there, not for a nefarious networking and building a career, even though that side of it was great, but I was playing with a guy that was doing a PhD in solar panels, making them 20% more efficient. I studied with a guy that's studied a theology theology masters, and now he's working at McKinsey. It's just like all this weird sort of interesting people. That was probably the most surprising thing about it, and that's probably where I learned most, to be honest, about the world. So it was really interesting.
Is it like The Simpsons with the Freemasonry and banging all your steins and ruling the world? Is it very much like that? How accurate was Matt Groening?
There is a bit of that. Not gonna lie, there's some weird traditions. Like you go to dinner, it's optional, but it's £7 because they heavily subsidise it, so everyone goes, and you have to wear black tie. You have to wear a coat, like a gown over your black tie. They bang this hammer before dinner, and then they sing a prayer in Latin, and you have to stand up and wait for the head of your college to come in to the and sit at the high table with all these guests. So it's a bit culty, but it's very cool, mate. And I'm very glad to experience it.
It sounds like the hat ceremony in Hogwarts out of Harry Potter. Sorry for the older generation that might not know what we're talking about, but that is interesting. What was the balance between study and rugby and keeping fit and active?
Yeah, that was probably a bit of a challenge for me. Obviously, coming off the back of my ACL, it was a really good refresh. It was a mentally hard time for me doing another knee. So I was like, good time to get away from the game. But at the same time, I knew I had to stay, relatively fit and healthy. So sort of leading up to the varsity match in March, just trained by myself, did my knee rehab and stuff. And then after Christmas, sort of come back in with a team, and they were training sort of 2 or 3 times a week on field, and then 2 or 3 gym sessions. And then sort of that last term after March, it was sort of a bit of off season really. So it was a bit of a tough choices to make. Do I go to a lecture by Hillary Clinton, or do I go to the gym and do my knee rehab? It was tough choices there to make, but I'm sure it'll be right once the games come around in the spring series.
That's a pretty big name drop. So did you go to the Hillary Clinton lecture?
Yeah. I went to the lecture. Not gonna lie, I couldn't miss her, mate. Yeah, Tom Hanks, Nancy Pelosi, all these people coming in. It was it was hard to go to the gym when you got a tutorial or a lecture by them. So it was had some tough choices to make, but I think I'll be ready to go when I need to be.
Tom Hanks, okay, right. Or Castaway and Wilson. There's all sorts of flashbacks. Before we kick on, we need to ask you this. You put up your first Instagram post where you said you finally learned how to do a tie. Is that a true story?
No, bow tie. So I didn't know how. I learned I used to have the bow ties that were like the preset. I think everyone's got one, but I actually learned how to do one because you get all these different bow ties, for your college, and then for certain clubs that you go to, you've got to wear a certain bow tie for that certain club. So I eventually had to give in and stop being the embarrassing Aussie that had to get his bow tie done by someone else. So
with the snap on. I did the same for my wedding last year. I was like, I'll learn how to do the tie. I didn't have a clue, and then I had to get one of my groomsmen to do it before, literally just before we went on. So that was interesting. It's not easy.
Yeah, mate. You should have given me a bait. I would have been able to help, mate.
Yeah. It was very stereotypical. It was the one gay guy in my line. He knew how to do it, and we were all mocking him because we thought that was pretty funny.
Very fashionable. Very fashionable.
Yeah, I know. It was brilliant.
Culture, boys, culture. So look, do you come back? Do you feel refreshed? Do you continue your studies over here? What's the next kind of few months look like to Tom Robertson?
Yeah, not really sure about that, whether I'd do another degree when I'm still playing. But I think in terms of the mental refresh, I really got what I wanted to get out of that year was, a good chance to step away from rugby and, focus on something else rather than, my knee for 9 months. So that was a real blessing for me. And, to get a pretty good degree out of it as well was, was a great coincidence. So it was, it was great. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully the next few years, big few years coming up. So really looking forward to ripping in.
And what is the degree? I know you were Dr. Robbo, down here, but what did you actually study, and what
So
did you specialize in?
It was called, so this wasn't actually a medical degree. It was like a politics degree. It's called a Master of Public Policy at the Blavatnik School of Government. So it's basically anyone that wants to run for political office or be in the civil service. There was 140 people doing it from 62 countries. And, you know, I sort of went there from a medical perspective to look at, you know, public health measures and how to get into, you know, government that way. So, yeah, that's really, really encouraged me, I think, to go down that route and get into government one day. And particularly from a healthcare perspective, it was really helpful.
I can understand where Hillary Clinton fits there. I'm not so certain where Tom Hanks fits into that.
He's just a good man, you know. They wanted him to get in. He came to the Oxford Union. You know, he's one of the best actors of all time, and I think he was in London, you know, promoting some museum that he was starting or something like that. So they asked him out, and he said yes. So, I mean, it was probably unrelated, but you know, why not? He was an interesting guy.
What was the if you had to choose between the lecture, who did the better one, Hillary or Tom?
Probably Tom. I'm not going to lie, Hillary. Yeah, I think everyone. Yeah, yeah, right, pup. No, it was. I think she was obviously very, very polarized in the US, and it was very political. I thought her speech, whereas Tom Hanks was a bit, you know, more open, free flowing. But I met another guy. His name, Tony Abbott. I met him last week, so he came and gave us a lecture as well, which was really cool. Obviously, very political as well, so that was interesting. But you know, they were all really cool people.
You would have had a lot of talk about there. Have you met Tony, Matt?
No, I have only met his social media guy who did his social media. ScoMo actually came on the field before we went off to the World Cup, and that was pretty cool. You know, all the political stuff aside, it's pretty special meeting someone like that who's it's pretty cool, I reckon.
Remember that 2019? It might have been David Pocock's send off as well.
It was
from Australian rugby. Yeah. Tom, what's from a Wallabies perspective, like the injury last year kind of scuppered any plans and kicking on with the Wallabies in 2023. But is there the chance that you kind of come back and maybe fit for later in the year? We know that our front row stocks at times have been tested, and they certainly are still at the moment. I imagine playing at the top, the pinnacle of the game, is still one of the things that you're really striving for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't keen to represent Australia again. But you know, I've got to get a lot more games under my belt. You know, coming off the knee injury, I only played twice over in the UK, so I really do need to get some game time, whether that's in Sydney or Perth Club Rugby, and then the Force have a spring series. I'm not sure if they've got the schedule fully organised yet, but we've definitely got some games later in the year, which will be pretty high quality. So, yeah, just need to get some games under my belt and obviously aim for the stars.
And just tell me, Michael Hooper announced last night, we're recording this on Monday evening, but it announced it on Sunday evening that he was hanging up the boots. You've played alongside Hoops for a long time, including at the Waratahs. Did you have an inkling, and what's kind of the standout thing about Michael that you remember?
Yeah, obviously it was a bit of a shock announcement, but really wish him well for the next chapter, whatever he does. Whether that's rugby overseas, whether that's retiring fully, I'm not really sure what his plans are. But yeah, he's been a great stalwart of the game. And the thing that probably the thing that stands out for me the most was just his consistency was the best I've ever seen from anyone in any aspect of life. Really, I mean, he was the hardest trainer, the hardest player every single time. And I know that's something I struggle with, and I know a lot of other people struggle with. And just to see him do that. For over 120 tests, 150 plus Waratahs games, played in Japan, sevens. Like he's been so consistent for so long, and really appreciate what he's done for me personally. But Rugby Australia in general, in a different place without him.
Yeah, completely agree. Hey, awesome to have you on the pod this evening. Welcome home. Spend some enjoyable time in Sydney, and hopefully we'll see you on the park in the not so distant future. And hopefully we can see you teach Matt how to do a Tyson.
All right, looking forward to it, pup. Thanks for having me, fellas. Appreciate
Good to chat, Throb. All the best, mate.
See you guys.
Hey, awesome to have Tom Robertson on the Raw Rugby podcast and a couple of tales there. I'm sure he's left behind a few, but I'm still kind of shocked that he's having Hillary Clinton and Tom Hanks in lectures, but that's all very cool. Let's change tack and we'll quickly head and get into a bit of Welsh rugby and check out where Wales are heading with the BBC's Gareth Griffiths, who's down under. Just touched down a few days ago. The test match, obviously, around the corner. We'll welcome you in. Gareth, how are you? Thanks for coming on the pod.
No problem, mate. Yeah, got here yesterday, so just getting the last bit of jet lag, I think, and then ready to go, really.
Experienced campaigner, if it's the last bit of your jet lag, you arrived yesterday. That's not bad. Are you coming down on first class?
No, I am struggling a little bit. I was just trying to put a brave face on it.
Gareth, tell us, we're, as rugby diehards, we're very excited for the upcoming series. But, obviously Australian rugby, we've been going through our own troubles. But, Wales as well in the last couple of years have been going through a lot of turmoil. How's it feeling in Wales? Are you excited, confident against a new Wallabies team?
I'm not sure about confident, as you have saying about those the tough times they've been going through. First of all, it's just nice to be in Australia. It's been a long time since Wales have been here, actually. It's been 12 years since they last did a test series here. I think they were due down here when COVID stopped one of those series. So it's just nice to be back here playing. It was a great series 12 years ago where Australia won 3-0, but Wales played quite well and could have won a couple of those tests. But this time, yeah, it's very different, isn't it? From the last time the Wales played Australia was the last high of Welsh rugby. It's when they won 40-6 in Lyon in that World Cup pool game. I'm not sure I've seen Wales play better than that against an Australian side who obviously sort of capitulated on the night and that effectively ruled them out of the World Cup, isn't it? But since then, Wales, they've won one game against Georgia in the pool and they've lost 7 internationals on a row. They lost the quarterfinal against Argentina, 5 games in the Six Nations, obviously, where they had the wooden spoon annals for the first time in 21 years, and then the warm-up game against South Africa, which at Twickenham last week. So, it's strange, isn't it? It's hard to really predict this test series because it's two nations who are struggling to find an identity at the moment, and two nations who are struggling to know what to expect. And Wales are sort of unrecognisable from that side who played in Lyon. They've lost a lot of players in terms of the way they play. A lot of players have either retired or they're injured or they're unavailable. And it's a very inexperienced squad that has come out here, especially up front in the Type 5. So confidence, not a word. I think both Australia will say this. Both teams just dying for a real test win, really, however it comes in the next 2 games.
In one area you have plenty of experience is your head coach, Warren Gatland. How did he approach the last Six Nations? Is there an element of, I think Wales in a sense achieved pretty decently at the World Cup, getting through the pools. That being said, was the Six Nations used as kind of a refresh? Are Wales targeting this series away? What's the kind of balance? Is there an obvious plan?
Well, he blooded a lot of young players in the Six Nations, a lot because he had to. If you just look at some of the names who've retired since that game in Lyon or are missing now, Dan Biggar, George North, Lewis Rees-Zammit, Jack Morgan's injured. And then before that, you've lost Alan Wynne-Jones, Justin Tipperick, Ken Owens, Rhys Webb. That's a lot of experience. So he's decided that he's going to look at the 2027 World Cup, and he's blooded a lot of players, given chances to a lot of players who hadn't really had that much experience in professional rugby, let alone, international. If you look at the likes of Cameron Winnett, Mackenzie Martin, Alex Mann, who's not on this tour, he's injured, Evan Lloyd, a hooker who'd only played a couple of games at Cardiff and is playing test match rugby in the Six Nations. So he said he's had to do that. And he's done that again. He could have gone with perhaps some more experienced players, but he has brought back Liam Williams, which will hopefully help that experienced element. But, he has lost a lot of experience and he's had to give these young players a chance. And, the results are there at the moment, in terms of Wales are so long. They've been a side that always would maybe have double the amount of caps that the opposition have. It's the other way around now in terms of the players they have. They've lost a lot of players with 50, 60, 70 caps, and they've got players now, they're blooding youngsters coming through, and it will be interesting to see how they cope in a very different environment. That some of these, they won't be used to international and in a touring element of it as well.
The extraordinary thing is Wales are 10th on the World Rugby rankings. I know that you can't ever pay too close attention to it, but it does speak of this year and how it's gone. Do you get the sense that they'll be able to bounce back? It was a tough United Rugby Championship for a lot of the Welsh sides. There's all sorts of drama in much the same way with Rugby Australia and the National Union struggling financially. Those same struggles have been apparent for Wales in Welsh Rugby Union for some time.
It has, and the success of the national side has often papered over those cracks of how the professional sides are doing and how they've been underfunded by the Welsh Rugby Union over the last few years. And when the national side aren't winning, then obviously everything then comes to the fore. And I've seen there's a lot of similarities between where the game is on and off the field with Wales and Australia at the moment in terms of that. And the Welsh sides are feeling that. And I think the main thing is that what Welsh Rugby has to do is just remember how to win again, because I think the record for Welsh sides last year was around 25%. When players are coming through and young players are coming through and they're continually losing matches, that is going to take its toll, and that's why they need more experienced players alongside them to help them with that. Once they start winning and they see that becomes a habit, then that will be beneficial. But at the moment, Wales, whether it be the club sides or the professional sides or the national team, victories are what they need at the moment. And Warren Gatland has said that he's not thinking too much about that. The performance goes, then the wins will come. But when you've lost 7 in a row and you have a nation like Wales, regardless of whether there is a realization that Wales are going through a transition, and some of the fans are a bit patient, and they said once they see the likes of some of these players in a couple of years' time, your likes of Dewi Lake, who's captain out here, and players like that, David Jenkins, Chris Chinza, in 2 years' time going forward, the Wales will be a force again. But obviously, in the meantime, it's a struggle, and people have to be patient with them.
I tell you what, Gareth, it's eerie how I'm not sure which team you're talking about half the time, because it's the similarities. It seems so well balanced, and I think, to be fair, a lot of these tests coming up, England going to New Zealand, Ireland to South Africa, they're a very well matched kind of series. Is there a collective effort from the North coming down to get a few wins, considering how the World Cup kind of panned out?
I think so. And then there's obviously in 12 months' time here as well, there's a Lions tour, isn't there? In terms of, you'll say the players won't be, thinking about that, but you will know if you perform in a sort of foreign backyard, that shows, Lions coaches, when this time Andy Fowler, that you are capable of going, to the top level and playing away from home. And they'll be looking at that as well. As you say, every series at the moment, as you say, look at teams that are well balanced, whether it be the top 2 in the world in South Africa and Ireland, whether it be a little bit sort of down in England and New Zealand, and then you have Wales playing Australia in the sort of, it's not the second tier, but it's, they're a lower level at the moment, shown by the World Cup.
Cellar dwellers, mate, I'm saying it.
Yeah. Gareth, what can you tell us a little bit about your skipper, your 10, as you talk about Alan Wynne-Jones and the Ken Owens have been around for so long, and of course it's like in much the same way that this Aussie squad, it's unrecognisable to half the Australian public that isn't tuned in on the week-to-week basis with Super Rugby. I'm sure that's the case up at Wales as well. What can you tell us about your skipper and your 10?
So Dewi Lake, since Warren Gatland came back, he's gone for youth with captain, very similar to what he did with Sam Warburton when he was here first time. So at the World Cup, you had Dewi Lake, the hooker, and Jack Morgan as co-captains. Jack Morgan took charge of most of the bigger games because Dewi was perhaps on the bench, Dewi Lake. But Jack Morgan had a brilliant World Cup. He was outstanding. He was brilliant against Australia, and he was one of the best open sides in the tournament. Since then, he's been injured. He missed the Six Nations through injury, as did Dewi Lake, and he has missed the tour after damaging his hamstring in training. During the World Cup, David Jenkins, again, 21, Exeter lock, very young player, was Wales's second youngest ever captain. He took charge of the side while Dewi Lake and Jack Morgan were away. And obviously Warren Gatland then had a decision to make whether it'd be, once Jack Morgan got injured, whether it would be David Jenkins or Dewi Lake. I think Dewi Lake's performance against South Africa, I think, really sealed it. He was absolutely outstanding. And he's a very physical, confrontational hooker. He will, he's very vocal on the field. He'll want his team to follow him. And you just sense he's 25 now, Derry, and he's a converted back row when he was 2021. But he is he's on the brink of being world class if he can just stay injury free. And he will not take a backward step, and he will be the epitome of this Welsh squad, hopefully down here in terms of the way he does the game. And Warren Gatland loves that ex-hooker. He loves somebody within that mould, and he comes down here very much as the first choice hooker. Elliot Dee is injured. Ryan Elias has been rested. So he is very much the first choice hooker. He's got two young Cardiff hookers, Evan Lloyd and Evan Daniel, behind him. So he will set the tone for this Wales team. And if he plays well, like he did against the Springboks, they will hope that inexperienced front five, because Wales have concerns at tight head in terms of the amount of experience they've got and the quality there. So they want Derry Lake to follow, to really set the example, and he's capable of doing that.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Wallabies know the struggles of not having a tight head that it's fit at a World Cup from last year. So we can talk about that pain. Hey, awesome to have your thoughts, Gareth. Obviously, you're going to be working for the BBC. Where can punters check out your fine work as well?
Yeah, just I'm out here for the website, the BBC Sport website. So yes, be posting daily content on there. So yeah, it should be good. I'm looking forward to it. Actually, it's been a long season, but since I arrived here, it's just it'd be nice. It's just never covered a tour here before, so I'm looking forward to a good 3 weeks, because after the Melbourne, Wales are staying on to play the Queens and Reds in Brisbane in the final game of the season. So just to make that season a little bit longer for the players, the 13-month season will continue until the 19th of July.
Well, you might have to wait until you get to the Sunshine State to see any of those sun rays. It's supposed to be a pretty dreary old week in Sydney, which is a stark contrast to last week in Melbourne. Well, you never quite know what's going to go on with Melbourne. Matt will tell you more about that. But, hey, thanks for coming on the pod, and I hope you have a lovely evening too, and we'll see you throughout the week at various presses before Saturday's game.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome to have Gareth Griffiths there, and geez, you can talk and you can hear the rugby coming out of his veins. A man that's pretty well is the Welsh 10, Costello, who is probably the only sole specialist 10 that Warren Gatland's brought out. You actually know him quite well.
Yeah, Sammy, I don't know if it's Costello, but we'll go with Costello. He was in the Leicester Tigers Academy when I was there. And same was Tommy Raffel, Owen Williams, who also played fly half for Wales as well. So they've got a little bit of a connection. And look, it's cool seeing him. I saw him. He played against South Africa. Started, missed a kick early on, but kind of eased the nerves, and you could see he's definitely made for it. But look, it was really interesting chatting to Gareth there. Honestly, if you switched off for 2 seconds, you'd think he was talking about the Australian team. So I think this is very much going to be a series that's won, up here. Whoever's got the confidence, whoever can kind of bounce back from any adversity, because there's plenty in both camps. I think it's fair to say that.
Yeah, it was interesting as well that Warren Gatland's kind of looking ahead 4 years down the road. Wallabies can't really do that because they've got a Lions series next year and then a home World Cup, and winning momentum is going to be crucial. And speaking to players, Fraser McWright, Filippo Danguna, Andrew Kellaway, they've been up in the last couple of days, and Joe Schmidt's all talking about, and his coaching staff is all talking about the fundamentals, doing the fundamentals really well. And if the Wallabies can do that, then they stand a chance. But they've got to be precise and accurate, don't they, against this Welsh side?
Definitely. I had a good long chat with Nick White actually last week or week before, and he reiterated what you just said, that Joe has just been like super, super focused on things like breakdown, clean ball, quickness. And if you look at teams, particularly that Irish team, and even now, to be fair, when he coached it, but even now under Andy Farrell, their ability to hold the ball in string phases together just set them apart. And it wasn't because of really flash and cool moves. It was very much breakdown, early arrival, body height, work on the ground, getting the ball back long place, and very much he sounds like he's bringing that to the Wallabies, and to be fair, I think it's probably an antidote to what we've needed in a way. I think we've always focused on the end product, the step offload. But those opportunities only come if you maintain possession. And it's exciting to see. I do feel there will be there will be a growth period where we kind of have to, maybe hang in there a little bit. That being said, it would be nice if we could just find a win. Get back to winning as Wallabies, get back to singing True Blue at the end of, once the game's over, as the Wallabies do. And I think if we can do that, it's much easier to build your game and build your systems from then on.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that once upon a time, I think it had been about a dozen matches and it felt like a dozen years that the Wallabies had a stranglehold over Wales. And that's just not the case now. Like they've struggled. It started in 2018 with Wales getting over the top, and then clearly continued in Tokyo at the Tokyo Stadium. And then still over the last couple of years, there's just been, I know that 2022, there was a great comeback, but they've always been tight, niggly affairs. What's a memory about playing Wales that stands out for you? And it might not even be winning or losing, just a moment that kind of sums up things.
Oh, probably one of the first things is an amazing stadium that you play at, Millennium Stadium. It's in my mind, it's one of the better stadiums in the world, if not the best in the world. The whole lead up to it, the drive in, it's very, very cool. They come from a passionate, supporter-based, passionate country, and they are just they're traditionally a very gritty, tough team. And if you're off, they'll win. But if you're good enough, you'll beat them. And I think there was a while there, 2011 kind of through 4 or 5 years or whatever it was, where we didn't lose against them because we kind of had that gloss. We had that little bit of X factor. And then I think in the last 4 years, when we've missed that, they're just a super tough team to break down, especially under Warren Gatland. And you saw that last year when he returned to the fold. You saw how good he was in that World Cup. Sure, we got a win in 2022, but that was under a different kind of coach. It was a different environment. And look, they're going to be very, very tough. In saying that, you'd be disappointed if we didn't win at least one, if not two.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you got a memory about going out in Cardiff? Not a bad place to go out. Chippy Lane is always an interesting one at the end of a match. Did the side get to go out in your experiences? Or?
Yeah, I was DDs a couple of times. I remember a few times actually. One of my agents was suing me because I wasn't paying him, and so we're going through lawyers at the time. And Nick White and I were DDs, and we come back to a McDonald's, at 3 a.m. before the test, because we weren't playing. And I just remember calling them up, a couple beers deep, like, stop suing me, mate. Anyway, we ended up sorting it out there, and then lawyers were out. It was brilliant. So not your traditional rugby story, but that's what comes to mind, unfortunately.
Geez, that sounds like there's a bit more to that story, but I like it.
There was, yeah.
Look, a couple of other things around the Traps. Wow, what an incredible win from Toulouse over the weekend against Bordeaux. A bunch of Aussies in there, but another title to Richie Arnold doing the double off the back of the European Champions Cup to smash Bordeaux in that way. That has Kane Douglas, Adam Coleman, Benny Tapaway, part of the wider squad, Pete Samuel off the bench. Unbelievable. And Antoine Dupont, once again, player of the game. What a way to be then stepping into a Paris Olympics with the French national side. Wow.
He is phenomenal, isn't he? And I really hope he gets a gold medal or a World Cup in his career at some point, because it'll really cap off kind of the remarkable talent that he is. Like, he is easily in that conversation for greatest of all time. He really, really is, and it's what a pleasure to watch. Genuinely, you admire him because he just makes things look so easy. I think he's brilliant.
Did you see the try, the chip and chase, and just the timing of it all, the set piece? Obviously that does well, but wow.
It just looks like he's taking the piss. Like, it really does. And it's not like he's physically, so much bigger and better than everyone else. Like, he's this short guy, extremely strong, but can kick off both feet, can fend, can tackle, can just honestly do it all. So yeah, look, what an amazing time we are. Kind of get to experience that and see a guy like him at his prime, because it's remarkable.
It certainly is. Okay, so the Aussie Sevens men's and women's Olympic side is going to be announced on Wednesday. Obviously, no Michael Hooper, but Wallabies Mark Nwanganu-Tuasi and probably a Wallaby in waiting, Corey Toole, expected to be announced. I know that Mark and I'm 99.9% sure Corey is going to be in there as well. 12 will be named with a plus another 2 travellers. That's the same with the women's as well. That's a pretty predictable squad with the women. They've been so consistent for a long, long time. They'll head there as, if not gold medal favourites, expected to reach the gold medal match unless there's a major hiccup. The junior Wallabies as well playing at the moment. They just kicked off their campaign with a 35-11 win over Georgia, but injury concerns are plenty. From my understanding, 4 players injured that will probably be coming back to Oz, including Jack Barrett, the young Waratahs prop who featured in Super Rugby this year with a broken leg. So devastating news for him. They've got matches against Ireland and Italy to come in this pool stage, but keep attention to that. So all sorts of things happening over the next couple of days. Looking forward to next week, Matt. We're going to have James O'Connor on the pod, but also we'll be talking about a Wallace Test match, and that's been, as we mentioned earlier, a long, long time.
Yeah, it's exciting. Test season is really where rugby comes alive, and as we mentioned earlier, the matchups this weekend are almost made in heaven. So yeah, looking forward to it. Rabs will, I'm sure, will offer a lot. The podcast, a very insightful player. So yeah, super exciting time. Really important. I can't wait.
I'm sure he would have had a night or two out in Cardiff over his years.
I don't know if you'll get much out of him. Although the new kind of Buddha Zen Rabs might find a lesson in it for all of us. Who knows?
Anyway, until next time, can't wait. And actually, before we go, what's a prediction? What's the score going to be? Maybe where they're around.
It's going to be 32-18 to the Wallabies.
Okay, 14-point win. I think Australia's going to get around that.
14-point win, yep.
Okay, I'm not sure if it'll be quite as high scoring, but I'd love to see that. I'm going to go 20 points to 17 to Australia in a tight, gritty affair, but it will be
Ireland,
good
South
fun.
Africa?
I think South Africa at home.
Yep.
Yeah, we've just seen them. Ireland probably not quite as good at the moment. Maybe those words are going to come back to bite me in the backside, but you just look at how the sides went in the URC as well, maybe not quite at the top, but New Zealand, England, that's going to be a cracker. Razor Robertson, it starts his tenure. Scott Barrett, captain. There's a lot to look forward to there. Yeah,
it's very exciting. I think the Irish, unfortunately, forever the bridesmaid, aren't they? They really struggling at the club level, but I don't know. There's a bit of history, a bit of feeling between the Irish and the South Africans now, and it's really exciting. I can't pick that, to be honest. I think New Zealand will be too good in New Zealand, but I'm struggling to pick the other one.
Yeah. All right. Look forward to it. Until next time, enjoy your rugby.